On Primetime Asia tonight, a U.S. aircraft carrier has arrived off the Philippines coast, bringing badly needed aid for the millions affected by Typhoon Haiyan.
I'm Timothy Go in Manila. The UN humanitarian chief was here, and she says help is not getting to survivors fast enough.
And still ahead here on Primetime Asia, counting the cost of a Typhoon Haiyan.
And join me live in Manila for a look at how the Philippines is dealing with what is its largest logistical operation in history, plus an economic account on how this typhoon will have for the country.
And joining me from the capital, Manila, is Timothy Go. Tim, you heard how authorities, they're trying to maintain security in Tacloban, but the government is under pressure to do a lot more, especially getting supplies to the affected people. So how is Manila dealing with what it has already acknowledged is the largest logistical operation in the history of its country?
Well, Glenda, apart from dealing with this large logistical operation, Manila is also having to deal with criticism, especially from foreign media outlets, saying that the aid is not getting to people fast enough. It is disorganized. There is no leadership on the ground. But the Communications Secretary, Sunny Coloma, says that the government accepts all these criticisms and will learn from them. He also explained that after the typhoon, in his words, there was near total communication breakdown. Those his exact words. But that he said the government tried to respond immediately following standard procedures, supporting and strengthening the capabilities of the local government. He also outlined today that there are 17,000 or more personnel on the ground and hundreds of road vehicles, sea vessels, and aircraft deployed to the area. So with all that in place, we do expect aid distribution to get to the people who need it the most. But the truth is, as we heard from reports from Jack and Christine there, many people will go to bed again hungry tonight. And joining me right now is ADB's Managing Director General Rajat Nag, who knows all too well what these people are going through. You were involved in the 2004 tsunami.
Right.
Could you explain to us the sort of impact this will have on the survivors who are trying very hard to stay alive?
Look, this is just absolutely an unprecedented catastrophe. The worst on record, probably the worst in the planet. So I think we've got to understand that the effect on the people is going to be tremendous, both physical and emotional. They lose all their bearings, physical bearings, emotional bearings. They lose a sense of dignity. They lose essentially a sense of why they are living and why the others did not. So it's a very, very difficult, very traumatic. They go through a post-traumatic period which will last for a long time. So I have to say this in defense of what is happening. Yes, there was difficulties. Yes, there are challenges. But look, the government is doing, the people are doing the best they can. This is an unprecedented tragedy. This is an unprecedented logistical challenge. So I would request you media to have some patience to understand what the people are up against. The criticism is not fair. There'll be time later for post-mortem. Now we've got to get the water, we've got to get the food, we've got to get on with what is happening.
We can be patient about it, but what do we tell the people on the ground?
No, that's the point. The government is doing, the people are helping themselves. What I'm saying is you've got to understand that this is a huge challenge. This is absolutely unprecedented. And I think we've got to look at everything from the point of view what the people can get, what the government can do. Lots of local governments, staff, lots of government people are trying their best. And I think we've got to all rally around doing the best we can. The international community, you, the media, and everybody else. It would be, I think, very important we get on with the job at hand rather than sort of, wringing our hands about what is not happening.
Okay, these are people who've lost everything and have nothing else to lose.
Absolutely.
What do we tell them?
Look, that's the point. You have to get them food, you've got to get them shelter. What I'm saying is that it's not easy. So we've got to have the empathy with the people, but also with the government, with the relief workers who are trying to get them. My point is that this is an unprecedented tragedy that the country has gone through in the poorest provinces of the country. And this is something that nobody could ever prepare for, in spite of all the warnings and all the others that were provided. So it's a huge challenge, and I think we will start to see things improving. But the people, the trauma of what has happened with them is going to last for a long time.
And where do they go from here? They've lost everything. Homes, jobs. What happens to them?
So this is why I think the priority for the government is, first of all, the immediate relief: water, shelter, medicines, some food, and then the rebuilding. And I hope very much that the rebuilding will not be just getting back to what it was, doing better planning, better climate proofing, better building standards to be put in place. It's going to be a very long haul. What these people have gone through, you and I will never probably be able to even imagine. I was involved in the 2004 tsunami, and it takes years for people to sort of come back to some sense of normalcy. But I'm hoping that, this will happen again in the Philippines, and things will start to get better.
What do you think is the economic cost of this tragedy, and long-term the economic impact it will have for the country?
The economic cost is a bit too early to tell. We haven't started doing the damage assessments. As I said, immediate challenges for the rescue efforts. But, tragedies like this could easily go up to 3%, 4%, even 5% of GDP. So it's quite significant. But long-term, the Philippines economy as a whole probably will not be impacted very much. Philippines economy was doing well. I think it'll obviously be a bit lower than what we expected earlier, 7% growth this year. Because Visayas, where this has happened, accounts for about 12, 13% of the country's GDP. So the economic impact won't be that severe. I think Philippines will be able to weather that. But the human impact, what you started off with, is going to be tremendous and going to be catastrophic, and people will sort of somehow make up their lives again.
All right, thank you for your thoughts, Mr. Nag. Rajnath Nag there is the ADB's general manager here in Manila. Back to you, Glenda.
All right, thanks Tim for that interview. We'll hear a little later from you in the bulletin. In the meantime, let's look at other stories also making headlines now.
You are watching Primetime Asia, and we are coming to you live from Manila with a recap now of the relief efforts in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan. A U.S. aircraft carrier has now arrived in the Philippines. It is one of 9 American Navy ships helping send aid following the typhoon. Britain will also be sending its biggest Navy ship to the Philippines. Now, on the ground, the aid operation is slowly getting into gear. But there are huge logistical challenges. The United Nations has admitted it did not act quickly enough to help survivors. 6 days after the storm, some remote locations still have not been reached. In the disaster zone, security is a major concern. Residents in Tacloban fleeing after rumors of looting and armed rebels sparked panic. Some areas are reportedly close to a state of anarchy as desperate survivors do everything they can to stay alive. Filipinos abroad are trying all ways and means to contact relatives affected by the typhoon. Channel News Asia's Ira Spitzer meets a Filipino in New York who is flying home to find his family.
Ronnie Bargayo is going home. Home for Bargayo is the town of Palo in the Philippines, which was directly in the path of Typhoon Haiyan. Bargayo's parents and 2 brothers were there when Haiyan made landfall, and he still has no information about their whereabouts or whether they survived the storm.
No one can really tell me. I've been asking in social media that can you please verify this our family, the family name. I gave them the family name, but still no one could tell if my family is still alive.
So the New York resident booked a ticket to fly to the Philippines immediately, where he'll try to make his way to Palo in spite of the chaos there, bringing whatever relief supplies he can carry in a backpack, like tablets to purify drinking water. The physical therapist has been anxiously following social media for news out of his hometown, which is located about 10 kilometers south of Tacloban City.
Everything was flattened to the ground. We have an ancestral house back in Palo, but there's a pictures on that area, but I couldn't find it anymore. It was really like unrecognizable area.
Bargayo is one of over 200,000 Filipinos who live in the New York City area. He lives just down the road from the area known as Little Manila in Woodside, Queens, where almost everyone has friends or family affected by Haiyan. In the wake of the typhoon's devastation, raising both awareness and relief money has been critical.
All of the money that we raise goes to the people. And that's one of the things that separate us from the different organizations, because we ensure that most of the organizations that we're donating with are the people who are working on the ground.
The volunteer-run organization has put together vigils, information sessions, and has encouraged people to donate money through their website, which Salon says is a safer way to donate because of their connections in the Philippines. Like many in the Filipino community, Salon has been frustrated by what she sees as a pattern of corrupt local officials misusing aid money. The local Filipino community is also giving support to those affected by Haiyan at home, like Bargayo. And while he doesn't hold out much hope for the house he grew up in, he says it is his loved ones that truly matter.
All those material things, it can still be replaced, but lives is more important than anything else.
Even for a place that has seen its share of natural disasters, the Philippines has never experienced anything quite as devastating as this typhoon. And for the more than 10 million Filipinos that live outside the country's borders, it has been an anxious week. This is Ira Spitzer for Channel News Asia in New York.
China has upped its donation to the Philippines. It will now give $1.64 million worth of relief materials. Now, that is up from $100,000 offered just last week. Diplomatic links, of course, between Beijing and Manila, as we know, suffered in recent years due largely to the territorial dispute in the South China Sea. Our correspondent, Valerie Tan, is joining us now live from Shanghai. Val, from $100,000 just last week to 16 times that amount. What happened?
Well, experts here say it was a difficult and controversial decision by the Chinese government. Beijing had to take into account the opinions of the Chinese people and its hard-hit neighbor, the Philippines. Opinions were split right in the middle amongst the Chinese people. One camp felt very strongly that China should not provide additional aid to the Philippines in light of the territorial dispute over Scarborough Shoal or Haiyan Island to the Chinese. And this we saw from the online comments on Weibo. But after China announced its initial offering of $100,000, commentaries started to appear in national newspapers calling on Beijing to set aside narrow nationalism and show generosity to a neighbor in need. So all things considered, Beijing's decision to increase its aid yesterday to the Philippines came after considering public opinion and its role as a rising regional power. Tim?
All right, Val, correct me if I'm wrong, but Beijing was criticized abroad over this. But as you were talking about comments from home and social media, the public seemed to not want the country to send as much money.
That is true, because China is also a victim of the super typhoon. 7 people have been reportedly killed and more than 3 million people injured and displaced in the southern provinces of Guangdong and Guangxi and seaside city of Hainan. So economic losses are estimated to be in the areas of $700 million. So Beijing will want to ensure that aid is first and foremost provided for its own domestic typhoon survivors. Nationalism is the other reason behind public opinion against giving more aid to the Philippines. There's still some public anger over the Philippines' dispute with China over an island in South China Sea, and Manila's refusal to apologize over its response to the bus hostage incident where 8 Hong Kong tourists were killed in 2010. Tim?
Well, we do apologize. We seem to have lost our connection with Timothy, who is in Manila.